I guess we'll just dive right in this morning because for whatever reason, we're not having music this morning. I can't hear you, your mic.
I said, I hear it. I hear music on my side.
You do?
Yeah. It's playing right now.
It is right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an interesting situation. So I'll turn it down then. Now, can you hear
You
it?
want me to turn it off? Maybe you just want me to turn it off.
No, that's okay. I think I turned it off. Can you hear it now?
No, it's off.
Okay. All right. So good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White. The truth, the slayer of truth in Oklahoma that people do not want to hear.
Well, I think we're both kind of that, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And at the end, I want to play. I know we kind of talk before we're going to go into the interview today, but I want to play a clip here at the end of the show from the COVID response study that was just at the legislature here recently from Dr.
I'm
David
glad
Martin.
you're following that because I have not. So thank you so much for that. Awesome. Okay. Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen because what we're going to talk about today is super important. I mean, we have people who like one of our guests today who literally has an adopted grandson on Sooner Care, which is now SoonerSelect, and this is bad. It's just not working. And I want to paint a little bit of a background for people who might be watching, you don't really understand where we are. So not long ago, and I'll throw these, I'll share my screen so you can see you'll see what I'm looking at here, possibly. Here we go. Okay. So after removal from state healthcare board, Lawton doctor expresses concerns. Well, this article was about Dr. Horsehair. And she is an ophthalmologist, and she was actually on the healthcare board. And that, I guess it's a video. And she talks about the fact that Governor Stitt, there was actually a vote to decide whether or not Oklahoma would bring their Medicaid patients under, was Sooner Care, under a managed care system. And there were two doctors on the board, and both of the doctors said no. They voted no. They didn't want that. Well, that's not what Governor Stitt wanted. So he just kicked off the board members.
Yeah.
And then just basically, and here's another one, physicians say they were kicked off Oklahoma board after blocking Stitt plan to outsource Medicaid. So this, to me, I'm just going to make this a me issue because I mean, at this point in time, I wish governors were only elected for 2 years because I would be out campaigning against this particular one. And we'll talk a minute about that when we're finished here, about another thing that he's done that I'm sincerely angry about. I mean, this is just all corporate cronyism stuff. And I reject that. And that is not what the state is supposed to be governed like. We're not a business. We're actually run by the individual citizens who live in the state and pay their taxes, not by corporations under the guise of we have to provide work for people and we need to get it, the workforce. We need to have, I get so mad. I get tongue tied. I can't even talk about it. So this is one of the things that he had done. Stephanie says, can't he be recalled? You know what, Stephanie? Can you get on that for me? We can't do that in Oklahoma, but I'm not saying that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be able to. And maybe it's about time to pass a law to be able to do that. I'm not really sure. Oh, good. And our Rumble isn't up working this morning, apparently. So we'll have to see about that.
Mason's got a comment there also.
Okay. Corporate cronyism as well as nepotism are big issues. And Mason, I would have to agree with that. I think you would too, wouldn't you?
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt.
I mean, this
and the only issue I have with the recall, Jenny, is, I mean, you'd get into just a nonstop legal battle with every single person that's in office, no matter what. I mean, that's all it would be constantly, is the other side trying to recall whoever.
Well, and I can see that perspective, and I can, but I mean, this is just, what do you do at this point? You know, I don't know. Well, let's bring in our guests so that we can, because we've got a nice audience this morning. So let's bring in our guests. So first, let me bring in Salome Vaughn. And Salome, God love you. You have a grandson who is an adopted grandson now on the system, correct?
Yes, and good morning, and thank you for having us on. I think this is a very important issue, and I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you for being here. I do appreciate that. And then we also have Senator David Bullard, who's joining us this morning. So, Senator Bullard, good morning. How are you this morning?
Doing well. On my way up. So just so that your audience knows, I'm not driving. I'm sitting in a parking lot.
You haven't been stopped by the highway patrol.
I'm not pulled over. I'm okay.
Sorry, you got to make light of something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So let's go to Salome first. So tell us what's going on. Give us your, tell us what's going on.
Well, I can give you a small synopsis of what the SoonerCare Oklahoma health transition has caused for me and others that are in this system. Once you are authorized through SoonerCare, your healthcare provider had to get that authorization for pay for your healthcare for your child to be seen, and that's the proper system. Well, the SoonerCare program, once it went into the Oklahoma health program, you had to get reauthorized. So that means you had to go through the system again, and any of your appointments had to be set off until the authorization was approved through Oklahoma Health. Now, I can tell you that even once you have been approved, that does not mean that your system or your child could get that approval on that date. So they may not have an appointment, or they may not have their prescriptions taken care of when they go to the pharmacy to get them refilled, because they're no longer on SoonerCare. Oklahoma Health hasn't got them approved, and there's no funding to actually get their prescriptions. A lot of parents are afraid because some of these children are special needs, and those prescriptions are life-threatening. Some of those prescriptions that those children have are seizure medications, things like that, Ritalin for behavioral, etc. My grandson is not on any kind of medication, thank God. And also at the same time, he does have therapy programs, and he had some special dental procedures that needed to be taken care of. They were authorized through SoonerCare. However, once he was put on the Oklahoma Health, they were no longer authorized, and the dentist that had been seeing him for over 6 years refused to see him on the Oklahoma Health program. So then we had to get a referral.
Wait, let me stop you just 1 second. So why did the dentist refuse to see him then? Because help me. I don't understand what's going on. So help me with that.
The dentist would not take the Oklahoma Health insurance. They took SoonerCare, but they were not going to take the Oklahoma Health, and they made a determination that they were no longer going to take SoonerCare either because of so many difficulties in getting their pay. And if you don't get paid, then you can't provide the services that you have authorized. So a lot of the healthcare professionals have said, we won't take SoonerCare, we won't take Oklahoma Health. You have to have a third-party insurance. Well, if you have a third-party insurance, you may not be able to get on SoonerCare or Oklahoma Health. So there is a big hole, a big gap for people that don't have independent healthcare. Well, a lot of what I've been dealing with is most of the information I get is outdated. It's just like back in August, I got a letter that was dated 1 day after the healthcare of enrollment for my grandson on Oklahoma Complete Health, and his Liberty Dental had been shifted back to SoonerCare program. Now, I got this letter 2 days after it was posted. I have the envelope from the United States Postal Service, and I was not even aware of this. They had not even advised me. Now, you know, most of your appointments need an authorization, a referral, or at least 30 days to get into the office. And you can't just all of a sudden show up and they say, well, your insurance is no longer good, so you need to find another dentist. That's happening. And I have it. That is happening. Or I would get a letter on one day, I would get a letter saying he had been denied. He had been denied an approval for a healthcare provider. And then that very same day, I would get a letter dated the same day that he had been approved. Now, if that system is what we're doing, if that system, I understand the system, it's a mess. I also understand that there are a lot of people that when they get a letter, they read it and half of it they don't understand. So they start making phone calls and they get put on hold. And I've got recorded information regarding the on hold information that you get from DHS or from SoonerCare or Oklahoma Health. And a lot of times they don't even have a healthcare provider listed as your provider in the program, because when the databases changed, the data got all skewed up, and that's a lot of the problem, because a lot of people don't even have the right address. I was told that some of my information wasn't approved because when I put my address down, I put lane, LN. Everybody knows if you have a road or a street or a lane, it's LN. But she said, well, that our database doesn't accept LN, so it kicks it back.
Well, I kind of like what Stephanie says. Everyone needs a tape recorder when dealing with any state authorities. I mean, it only protects you. I mean,
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
the child. We have to protect the child.
Amen. Well, let's get Senator Bullard in here just a second. Senator, God love you. I know you've been out there talking about this numerous times, and you were not a fan of managed care in the first place. Can you just explain to people, because I had to have it explained to me, can you just explain to people what managed care is? How do the tax dollars that we put aside for Medicaid for these people, how do they get to the providers and then back to the people who need to use them?
Yeah, so probably the easiest way to explain managed care is it's a shave away from being single payer. It's about as close to single payer as you can get. So instead of it being run by the government, now all of these health decisions, everything that you do is decided by what are called MCO, managed care authorities, right? And these managed care authorities are insurance companies. They're not doctors, they're not physicians, they're not people like that. And so what happens is when you go to put in, when the doctor renders a service to you, they have to now put in a claim instead of doing it with the healthcare authority, which used to pay out low. Even the doctors have said we were top 4 in the nation for the lowest payout per capita. But the doctors were okay with that because they were consistent. They paid out every time. They could run their business that way, and they weren't fine with it. So the taxpayers were getting more bang for their buck. They were getting more people taken care of at a cheaper cost on the system that we had. Then we shifted to managed care. And when you study other states, exactly what's happening now in this state has happened in other states. This is not a surprise. So now, instead of going through the healthcare authority, they have to go through an insurance company, and that insurance company says, we're going to pay for that healthcare thing you've already rendered, or we're not. And what happens is when you balk enough time on these doctors, kind of what Salome was talking about, eventually these doctors say, I'm better off to go off of SoonerCare and just take cash pay payments or people who have private insurance. And that cuts out the entire sector of people we're trying to help with those taxpayer dollars, because now your doctors get so frustrated with it that they're done.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I was going to say, well, obviously, if you have cash or your own private insurance, you're dealing with something the other way. So,
right.
and a lot of these people who are on this system are, now correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my understanding, are like Salome, adoptive parents. They adopted from the state as the state kind of helps these adoptive parents by providing insurance and that kind of thing. Am I wrong?
No, that's correct. You have a lot of people that go through the adoption services in Oklahoma that are automatically put on it and placed on it. And that's an effort to help our adoption services grow in Oklahoma. And that's a fight against abortion. Because if we have a healthy adoption service, then why is there a single need for an abortion in the state of Oklahoma? But that's collapsing because we those people who need it the most under our adoption services are not getting those services.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, the foster care program. A lot of the people on the Sooner Care are also on the foster care program, and these are children that are not adopted. They're just in the system. They're DHS custody. They're state custody.
Right. These are all battles that we're fighting right now with managed care, but there are models for this in other states. Other states that have done this, their doctors came back and have said, this is a horrible idea. Don't do it. The insurance companies, we know, want to hold as much money in their coffers as they can because they make money on the interest of the money that they're holding. So they want to hold that money.
Okay, so that's where I want to stop. Okay, the way I was going to make a diagram out of this to kind of help people understand it. So taxpayer money comes in. So here's the glob of taxpayer dollars. And instead of going directly to the healthcare authority, who then distributes the payments to the doctors, which is the way it used to be, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So now it goes through one of 3 private insurance companies. So the money goes out, and instead of going through the healthcare authority, it goes through these 3 individual insurance companies before it can pay out to anybody who's in the system. So if you don't see what a problem that could be, I'm not sure how, because like you just said, Senator Bullard, insurance companies are focused on the bottom line, right? I mean, they have boards. They are usually listed on the stock exchange. They have people that expect to get some kind of a return on investment from them. They're focused on the bottom line, and the bottom line doesn't have anything to do with the kid who needs to have their teeth done.
Well, and it's always, as it is with most government programs, when the brag of managed care was always, well, what we're going to do is force doctors to pay attention to the health care. They only get paid if the person is getting healthier. That's not managed care. That's not what it is. It's never been that way in a single other state. What it is it's insurance led. It's led by insurance companies that, okay, go wreck your car and find out how easy an insurance company is to deal with on your car. Now multiply that times 400 and you have managed care that we're trying to deal with now. And the thing about it is, I think a lot of people think about a doctor and they think about the nice guy or the nice lady. And I'll be honest with you, it's not just the doctors that are struggling right now. The doctors probably make enough money that they can kind of manage for a little while here on this thing. It's the physician's assistants. They're the ones getting probably hammered even worse than the doctors. And that's coming from the doctors and the physician's assistants. But what happens is that these companies say, well, we don't really think from an insurance perspective that you should have done that procedure. So we're not going to do it for you. Or they code it different because they're not doctors. And so the coding is all messed up and they can't figure out how to code things like what Salome was talking about. They can't even recognize that LN stands for lane. You know, what other abbreviations can they not figure out in a government institution? You know, it's almost as bad. We might as well put TSA in charge of our insurance company, our insurance payouts, and see how that one goes. But it just doesn't really work all that well when we're talking about getting the health care that we need. And here's the problem. Healthcare, if you're talking about it up in your urban areas, probably your healthcare systems can manage through this. Okay, they're not great. It's not going to help with health outcomes. It's your rural healthcare systems that are failing. So your rural docs go out into your rural areas because they want to. If they wanted to make money, they'd go live in the urban areas.
Right.
They choose less money to go out in the rural areas where they live because they want to live out there and help people out in the rural areas. They're not a charity.
Right.
And we have these false claims that doctors are over claiming and that they're double claiming and that they're doing all these things. I can tell you, I know these doctors. There's no evidence to substantiate that claim. And so what happens is our rural systems are the ones that are most vulnerable right now. Your rural hospitals can't hold on much longer. Now your hospital might, but what good is to have a hospital without a doctor? And so your hospitals, to be very clear on this, your hospitals are probably making more money off this thing. I'm talking about administratively. Your doctors are not making a fraction of what they used to, and they can't hold out very much longer. They have to pay employees. They have to have supplies and services to what they're doing. So your docs are holding out as long as they can. But when you think about where I live in Durant, we already have people packing their boxes headed to Texas.
Mhm.
Well, how did that benefit people in Oklahoma? How did that make people in Oklahoma healthier when my doctors are packing up and leaving and getting out of this thing? That is a major concern of mine, and I don't think we can hold out much longer. One other thing, I know I'm hogging time, but I want people to realize this has been attempted before. I didn't know that until I started speaking out about the problems and I started getting contacted by people. This was tried before. How long did it last, Jenny? I'll give you a quiz. Do you know how long the first attempt at this lasted?
I thought it was 2 years.
90 days.
90 days.
It
Okay.
lasted
All right.
90
I was
days.
getting so confused because I tried to research some stuff, so I could at least try to talk cogently about this today. And I thought it was 2 years, but 90 days. Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry, I threw you on the bus a little bit there, just to jab at you a little bit, but 90 days, that's why it lasted. And what happened from everybody that has called me and talked to me about this, they've said, David, it started doing exactly what they're doing now. And the rural docs started packing their bags and said, we're out. The healthcare authority came back and said, never mind, we'll just cancel it and we'll go back to the way the system was. And we promise we won't ever do this again. Well, here we are. We've done it again. And now your rural docs are leaving. And they're getting ready to leave, or they're refusing to even take Sooner Care, which means the people that I represent are suffering because they can't get to the services that they need, that we set aside and work so hard to get to. That's why we've got to make some changes on this.
Okay, well, obviously I was wrong before, but wasn't it the 90s when this was tried before?
No.
Yeah, well, yeah, I believe it was in the 90s when they tried it the first time.
So here's my question, because this is always we promise we'll never do it again. There's so much turnover in these positions, and then people forget, and then even the people that are served by these things, hopefully they end up getting off of it, first of all, eventually, but then people forget about it, and we just end up doing the same stupid things over and over again. And I'm sorry, Michael, I stepped on you. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to ask, for those that don't know, how did we go from what we had to this new system? Was that something done by the legislature? Was that done by one of these healthcare authorities? Was that done with the stroke of a pen? Like, how did we get here?
Yeah, it was done by the legislature. There were several attempts to do it. My first year in, this was the biggest battle that we hit, was that they were wanting to put in managed care. We kept voting it down, or they didn't have the votes to get it done. And then all of a sudden, something shifted and changed, and they came back and said, no, we've got it right this time. We've got it where it needs to be. And they came in. What's interesting is the law that was put in, actually, when I read it, had a whole lot of different guardrails on it that said they have to pay out by a certain time. They have to do all these different requirements, and they're not meeting those legislative requirements. They are not meeting the law right now. They're not upholding the law.
Well, but then here's my question about that. Why is it? Because this happens over and over and over again. Why do we even have laws, Senator? Because who's enforcing half of them?
Well, so the agencies are supposed to be the ones executing those laws. They're part of that executive branch, and they're the ones that are supposed to be executing the law. And so that's what we're working on now. That's one of the questions I have is, why are we not enforcing these things? If a managed care company will not pay out, and we had an OB doctor in my area that said that he was denied payment for a delivery, for the delivery of a baby. Yeah, they wouldn't even pay out for things like that, and so it is really problematic about the fact that they're just refusing to pay out that money. And I went back to the doctors and I said, okay, help me understand this, because I don't come from your world, I don't speak your language. Why would an insurance company want to sit on that money and not pay you? And they were the ones who had to explain this to me. They said, David, we're not talking millions of dollars, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. The longer they hold that money and refuse to give payment or stall giving you payment, what's the interest on $100 million? It's a lot of money. And so they stand to make money on money whenever they do this. And so we've just carte blanche turned the system over to it, and we've quit looking and watching and enforcing the guardrails that were put in for them. And we have to get to that point where there's got to be a fix. We either have to put in harsher punishments. In other words, you're not allowed to provide health care here or be an MCO in the state if you will not pay out and pay out on time in a timely manner. Or we need to cancel it outright. If they're not going to play ball, we just need to get rid of the thing and go back to the way it was, the more efficient way that we had it.
So just for clarification, it's the private insurance company that's holding the money. They're the ones not paying out on these claims.
Yeah, Michael, that's correct. Those companies are the ones that are sitting on that money because they've got the money coming in for the person, for the people, but they're not paying it out. And there's a whole there is a whole gamut of problems that we're talking about. Some of it's in coding. They're not getting their coding right. They're refusing to communicate. When the doctors have called me and said, every time I call, I can't get a hold of a person. The first time I have a disagreement with them, they won't call me back. They won't answer my phone calls anymore. They won't answer my emails. So we're still facing the same problems we had back in June when I first called this out. We're still having some of those problems. Now, some of them have gotten their payouts because we paid close attention to those people and they showed up to a press conference, right? Those are not the ones I'm after. I had those people show up at a press conference because they were the ones who were knowledgeable about it. They were the ones that had the problem. But I'm talking about every single doctor and physician assistant, everybody in my state. They need to be getting paid out on the things that they're putting these claims in for, or we're going to have a complete collapse of the system. And that's just, I can't sit back and let the system collapse the way that it is.
Well, Salome, is there, well, and here's a good, Mason's had a couple of good questions. So let me go back. He said, just curious, is OHMS involved in this process at all? I know they manage a ton of information and data for Oklahoma.
I'm not new.
Oh, I'm sorry, Salome. I didn't mean to cut you
That's
off.
okay.
That's a good question from Mason on that. I can check to see, but I can tell you if OMES is involved in it, it may be part of the problem. I'm trying to figure out why OMES even exists. So that's another issue that you need to bring me back
Well,
on.
I can actually tell you it exists to take a lot of taxpayer dollars and collect a lot of data on taxpayers.
I'm thinking you're exactly right. It's another stretch and form of bureaucracy that doesn't do its job and causes more confusion. But I don't know if they're part of this problem or not. They are a part of a lot of other problems.
Well, and then Mason also said, are there not any repercussions or fines for them not paying out?
Yeah, so that's what I was talking about. That's built into the law that's not being implemented right now. The healthcare authority, from what I understand, has that's under their jurisdiction, so that they would have to go in and call them out and discipline them for not paying out in a timely manner or not paying out.
Okay, so let me ask you this question then. And Salome, I'm kind of asking you the same question. So let's go to you first, Salome. Do you feel as though you're able to go talk to anybody other than Senator Bullard here, who apparently is very concerned about this issue? Do you feel like you can go talk to anybody and say, hey, my grandkid can't even get their teeth done? You know, what's going on here? Do you feel like you're able to call these people out?
I can tell you I've got numerous phone calls and I've got numerous emails, and I can tell you for a real fact that when I make a phone call, because I was told DHS is in control, When you call DHS, usually most of these children have a DHS worker, but I was told that now, which the system changed in February, and now it's changed back. These children that are on this system do not have a specialized DHS worker specific to their case. So when you make a phone call, each DHS worker has to go through the file, get a kind of a little bit of a glimpse while they're on the phone with you, and then advise you, I'll get back to you, or we'll look into this, or this system should be getting settled and the problem should be updated as soon as we can get some things handled here at the office. They are not allowed to give you their full name. And I was told that that was public policy so that when you call back, you don't get the same person. Now, that's the system that I've been used to for the last 6 months. I want to tell you something.
What do you even do? I mean, in all honesty, I just can't even. And I'm with Whitney. I'd like to see how many campaign donations were flowing into these private insurance companies that Governor Stitt is the one who picked. Governor Stitt picked these 3 insurance agencies. So I think it might be interesting for somebody to go back and look into campaign donations.
That might be interesting, but I want to also let you know something else that I was advised of, because my grandson has also been on the DDSD list for 10 years, which he was finally taken off of.
Can you explain that? Explain that.
Developmentally disabled.
Okay.
That's a program that DHS also manages.
Okay.
And I can tell you that they interlink because of the therapy that is provided. They interlink. So if you get therapy from one section, you can't get it from the second because it's considered double dipping. Well,
okay.
Money was allocated 9/23. That's back in September of 2023 for my grandson to receive appropriations and therapy. Guess what? As of 9/24, none of those allocations were actually used. Now, I asked, where is all of that money that was allocated to him? Because it's like a bank account. You deposit the funds. Where does the money go? And I was told, and I have it in writing, and this is not a legal accounting term, it dissolves. Those funds dissolve. Now, where do they dissolve to? Now, I happen to know that Social Security, if it's not used when someone dies, it goes into a general fund, and the legislatures down at the United States Capitol love that because that's money they don't have to approve or have any kind of say over. It just gets put in a general fund.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, to me, ridiculous. But I can tell you, for a year, my grandson was on a DDSD list and not one dime was allocated for therapy. Not one.
So, Senator, how in the world do we make this right? I mean, so as a taxpayer, everybody who's watching this morning, we've got a nice audience today. Everybody who's watching needs to share this with your friends and family, because these are your tax dollars that aren't going where they're supposed to be going, like to Salome's grandson. So that's huge. That's a huge thing. And it's the reason why people are so frustrated and angry at government right now. We are forced to pay these taxes. If we don't pay them, our house gets taken away from us. Our livelihoods get taken away from us. We get thrown in jail. And yet those tax dollars aren't going where they're supposed to be going. Senator, what can we do here?
Yeah, there's a number of steps we need to take, but to those out there in the audience, you need to be contacting your legislators and asking them, why is Senator Bullard the only one so far that stood up on this issue? And a lot of it is there's retribution for everybody. Salome kind of hit on it. You know, if you stand up, I have a lot of doctors that are scared to death to stand up and go talk to them because they're afraid they'll get no payouts whatsoever rather than just the fraction they're getting. But I always keep on my desk at my house, I keep a little plaque, and it's got the saying from Thomas Jefferson that says, when the people fear government, there's tyranny, but when the government fears people, that's called freedom. And I think that's where it has to be. You have to find out Is your legislator for managed care? Are they okay with the way that this is going down with doctors? And we have to definitely understand. We definitely have to understand that when we are talking to people about how this is going down, leadership is the one that was pushing this later on. And I'll put the plug out there. I'm running for pro tem, and I'm running on making things like this go away. And so we need to understand that we have to make sure that your leadership and your legislators are held accountable for the things they put in that are hurting your healthcare system. I think, too, you have to understand doctors and physicians, assistants that are out there, please don't sit down on this thing. It was really, really tough to get people to show up to a press conference. But you have to understand, if you sit down, they're going to railroad this thing over the top of you and nothing will get done. They'll replace leadership and they'll put somebody in who's pro money laundering and pro campaign donations rather than pro people. And they'll make sure that nothing ever happens on this. They will maintain status quo on the people that they're trying to get something pushed through for crony capitalism. So we have to stand up. You have to keep standing up. And for those doctors and physicians out there, if you need to email me about a problem you're having, I've put this out there several times, but my email is david.bullard@oksenate.net.
Thank you.
And y'all email my office. Let's find out. But also email your legislators at the same time. Find out where they stand. Are you okay with this? Because especially my rural legislators, I can promise you, most of my rural legislators are not okay with what's going on this deal. And so we've got to put the pressure on them. The people have got to stand up and let their voice be heard that this is not okay.
Okay, so I want to go back. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Oh,
so I want to go back just a second to.
Jenny,
I'm sorry.
Hang on. It's oksenate.gov. I said net. I got it wrong. It's oksenate.gov. I'm sorry.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix it.
David.bullard@oksenate.gov.
Oh, and I'm with Julian. This is what I was going to say. Please, everyone, call your state senator and call your state senator. That's who you have to call. So the one that sits under the Capitol that you voted for to stay here in Oklahoma, not in Washington. They're not going to help us here. The ones here, call your state senator and ask them when the pro tem comes up. Well, no, tell them they work for you and you want this vote. And I just wrote an article this morning. We'll go over it after we're finished here about Kyle Hilbert, who's running for the Speaker of the House. And it's the same exact thing. People don't understand how much these positions affect what's going on in our whole state. They're the ones that decide what bills get heard. They decide what legislation to run. They're the ones that usually are working with the governor behind closed doors to make sure that whatever thing that the governor wants is getting accomplished. This is not okay. This cuts the people completely out of the process. And unless you want to get cut out, unless you want an authoritarian government, you better do what Senator Bullard is saying and stand up. We've got to quit living in fear because there are more of us than them, but nobody would ever know it because we don't stand together. So that's my big, rah speech for today. But it is true. I know, Senator, that it is huge who runs the Senate, who is the pro tem of the Senate. Were you able to get many bills that you authored heard last year, this last session?
No, and as a matter of fact, there was we were started paying attention to how many bills. We should have been doing that longer, but it was somewhere right around 90% of all conservative bills died without even getting a hearing in the Senate. Now, we didn't study the House. I was just talking about in the Senate, but in the Senate, 90% of conservative bills never even got a hearing. We didn't even get a chance to argue those bills because of that leadership. And a lot of that's why I'm running. There ought to be a fair opportunity. If you don't like the bill, vote no. If you don't like what's going on, stand up and run for that leadership and try and solve the problem yourself. But to try and mask it, to try and stop a bill by smothering it to death is not acceptable. If you don't like the bill, vote no. Stand up on your principles, stand up on your laurels, and then let's go from there. But this nonsense of don't even give us a shot at talking and arguing. The whole point of the legislature is we're there to argue and debate and go at each other. That's what we ought to be doing. And then at the end of the day, we'll go grab a steak and everything's cool. But go get in there and argue about those bills that are out there, and let's talk about them. Let's get these things out there. So, yeah, no, I did not get very many of my bills heard. And moving forward, they have been very clear that their intention is to shut down, lock down, and get rid of anything conservative in the Senate.
I'm so sorry.
And Julie is right. They don't want to be on the record for voting against their lobbyists or the PACs that contribute to their campaigns. And we could all talk about that on a different day, which we will. But we really have got to figure out how to make this stop. And Salome, you were telling me the other day, we talked about this briefly, but I really want to highlight this because Senator, you talked about it as well. Salome, when we were talking the other day, you told me, I believe it was you who told me that at least one clinic that you know of has just gone out of business because they weren't even getting paid,
so they had to quit. That's correct. Yes. Yes.
So was it?
They're down in Hugo, and they were actually a birthing clinic. Now, I'm telling you, and Senator Bullard probably knows them, but I mean, we can't let the people suffer because we can't provide services. And a clinic cannot stay open if they cannot pay their electric bill, if they cannot pay their staff, if they cannot keep their facility clean and stuff. They just can't. I couldn't go 30 days, 90 days, 120 days without paying staff. I could not do it. And your electric bill, if you can't keep the electricity on for your clients to come into the clinic, then who or how are they going to be seen? How? That's the problem. And like I said, I have got resources. I'm okay. I have several jobs. I can pay my bills. But there are people out there that cannot. And the children are the ones that are suffering, and their caregivers are just absolutely scrambling to try to figure out how to help.
You know what just hit me? And Michael and Senator Bullard, I think you might even agree with me on this. Every time the public education advocates want money, but it's for the children. Do you see where I'm going with this?
Oh, yeah.
This is really for the children, but yet we can't do anything to help them. Holy moly, that makes me infuriated. And you're lucky we didn't get curse words there.
Well, Senator, do you think, is this done on purpose to make things bad, to force a different system like a single payer or something like that? I mean, is that coming down the horizon here?
I think it could be in all the states where it's been passed. It's just ruining the system that they have there. The docs are getting out; they're moving somewhere else, and it wouldn't shock me if that was some of that goal, is to just make it so miserable that we all have to move to a single payer system. Now, I will tell you, this is awful close to it, because this is Big Brother sitting over the tops of these doctors saying, "Nah, we don't think that delivery of a baby was all that necessary." And that's kind of the stuff that you work with when you start getting into how these people do it. So I saw that one from Sarah that popped up just then that said federal incentive money. You're right. And you kind of hit on it just then when you talked about it. My time in the legislature, what I found is there's nothing under the sun we won't sell our soul for right now. And we're selling our kids to the federal government. I run a bill for years. When Joyless Hofschister was the superintendent of public schools, and sorry, did that come out wrong? Sorry. But I ran a bill to say, that constitutionally, there's no mention of education in the U.S. Constitution, so it's unconstitutional for us to have money coming from them. The state ought to replace that fund and take that over so that we get the federals out of the way. Boy, you ought to see the reaction I got. How dare you not take federal money? Well, what is for sale and what isn't for sale? There are things that we have to stand on principle and say, sorry, that one's not for sale, and our kids are one of them.
But how do we do that if we don't have the voices of the people and the doctors and everybody else, standing up in unison going, knock it off?
Well, I think, Jenny, to respond to that, here's how I would think it through. They might get one or two of us to sit down if we stand up one at a time. What they cannot do is, if thousands of us are standing up at one time saying we're done with this thing, fix it, put it back the way that it was, make it right, make it better than what it was, then they can't punish enough people. So if you have a few that stick their necks out there, they're going to get their head chopped off. But if there's thousands of us, they can't do anything about it. They have to listen to what we're saying, and then you'll start grabbing media attention on things. But Benjamin Franklin was the one that said, if we don't hang together, we'll hang one at a time. And that's kind of what this is with a government agency. That's called tyranny. And the government agency basically is, if you just stick your neck out there a little bit at a time, kind of like what Salome was saying, well, all of a sudden I can't get any services whatsoever. So they've scared us into submission. But if thousands of us stand up, if thousands of doctors will stand up, if thousands of PAs will stand up, if thousands of diagnosticians at schools will stand up against this nonsense, we'll get somewhere with it.
I know petitions they're not well thought of, but in general. But how would you suggest that they stand up? Maybe PAs and doctors, for example, sending letters to their senators or sending letters directly to your office telling them to stop? I mean, what do you see as the most expeditious avenue for change here at this point? What would you advise people to do that would have the biggest impact?
Well, I really think a petition probably would work as long as you have hundreds of thousands of names on that petition. I think that would get some people's attention on the fact that stop putting your hole in the sand and pull your head out of the sand. And yes, I had a different phrase to use there and chose not to. Pull your head out of the sand and stop pretending that this thing is working. And let's take a realistic look at, is managed care actually doing what we think it should do, or what you said it would do? The other one is what we talked about earlier, that personal contact, write letters, make phone calls. Don't be harsh to them, be direct to them, but don't be harsh. You don't have to be a jerk to them. Call them, talk to them, build a relationship with them, and explain your situation. I mean, all of these people have stories behind them. And behind every dollar is a person. And so if you can go back to a physician and say, listen, this is the money that we've lost. These are the patients that I've lost. These are the things that I've lost. Your senators and your representatives are going to start listening to you on those kinds of things. And if anybody was paying attention in this last election, it was this. Grassroots efforts work. They have completely shifted the Senate, and they have shifted quite a bit in the House. And I think it got a lot of legislators' attention because they watched grassroots go out. You couldn't buy, for the first time in Oklahoma history, you couldn't buy an election. They spent over $5 million.
Oh, yes, they did.
On moderates that all of them lost. And so here's the deal. If grassroots stands up and goes back to these people and says, solve the problem, put it back the way it was and even better, or grassroots is going to come after you, I'm pretty sure they're going to be okay with putting it back the way it was. So grassroots is the answer to almost everything that we're dealing with in the state right now. And it can solve this problem.
We were called political animals by Governor Stitt when we stood up for Jim Shaw against, Kevin Wallace, who was the chairman of the Appropriations Committee in the House. So I won't even say, I don't know, maybe we'd better call ourselves political animals. Instead of grassroots, I don't know. But I think you make an excellent point. Part of the reason that we're here today, even, I think, is because of the fact that Senator McCourtney, who was the heir apparent for the pro tem for next year, is gone. He was flat voted out of office. I think lots of us did a really good example of showing that he received more money from PACs and lobbyists than anybody in his district. And that's what I've actually shown with Kyle Hilbert. It's the exact same thing with who's running for the House. It's the exact same way. It all comes from, so much of it, 90% of it, 95% of it comes from the same people who have an interest in passing legislation because it affects their bottom line. They get a government contract out of it, because I'm firmly convinced, like the OTA, I am firmly convinced that all the Oklahoma Transportation Authority is just a government jobs program for people who want to donate politically. I'm pretty sure that's the bottom line. I mean, we absolutely have to stop that. And here's another thing. If you support your representative, help them. For Pete's sakes, if they need a little money to put out a mailer, help them. But for Pete's sakes, don't just leave them in the lurch. So, because if you leave them in the lurch, somebody else is going to come in and donate a money.
Well, and if you stick your neck out there and get slapped enough times, a lot of times they'll stop sticking their neck out there for you. So you got to stand up there next to them, and you got to help them just a little bit. Now, some of us are a little tougher than others, but I'm not in this job for friends. I think we've probably shown that. We're in the job to make sure that we get policy done. When I'm done in 12 years, we'll see what the Lord's got in store. But for right now, my job is to get the policy part of it right. And on managed care, we didn't get the policy part of this thing right. And you got to understand, probably the best way I know to put it is, I think for the first time in Oklahoma history, the largest lobbying firm in Oklahoma are grassroots. It's not these multi-millionaire lobbying firms anymore. Grassroots just kind of took their rightful place in Oklahoma. They did what they were supposed to do. And I've been encouraging these grassroots people, if you weren't part of that movement this last election, you better join and get involved with it and go knock doors for a good person who is the real deal. Because if you think for a second that liberal Republicans, that the old Democrats that switched to ours are going to give up this state and their power and their money freely, you haven't figured that part out. You're missing the whole boat. They will fight this tooth and nail. They're going to come after me. I already know that they are. They're going to spend millions to try and just take me out because they think if they cut off the head of the snake. But it's like I've told people this before. I believe firmly that Donald Trump did not create this movement in America of freedom. The Trump the movement created Trump. Trump just happened to be in the right place.
That's a fair cop.
This movement was not created by me. Grassroots. I did not create grassroots. I've got people saying that I'm the one that took out McCortney. I hate to break this to you. I didn't get involved at all. Grassroots did it. And at the end of the day, the grassroots movement is what's creating this shakeup in our state, and it's a good thing. Don't slow down, because you're actually for the first time making a difference, and you're fixing to have a state that you can be proud of if you'll keep it up.
Well, there's another, Sarah Van Alstyne made a really good point. She said grassroots and medical professional associations moved mountains to change the HIE bill from shall to may to prevent mandates of sharing patient private records with an expensive online nonprofit. And Sarah, that is an excellent point. And so if you think, and then she follows that up by saying Bullard for Senate Pro Tem. Absolutely. So if you think that we don't have the ability to do this, you're wrong. You're completely wrong. You just have to make that step to do it. So I don't know. How can we help you, Senator Bullard? And let's start there. How can we help you?
Well, we need to keep hearing from doctors, because this is not my lane. Now, one of the things I will tell you that's been impressive is you have several people now in the medical field that are going to be in the Senate. Dr. Julie McIntosh, who is fabulous. You're going to have Dr. Grellner, and if you're in Dr. Grellner's area up in there, please help him. He is the real deal. He is legitimately good, and he understands this a lot better than I do. I'm an old educator. constitutional teacher, so I know the Constitution and education very well. But I'm learning this on the fly as I go. You've got people like Lisa Standridge. Lisa is absolutely superb. She knows this backwards and forwards. And so we've got a chance to really support some people that know how to solve the problems that you're talking about, Jenny. I think that if we can get the ball in their court and tell them you're the professionals in the field, how do we solve this problem? Then we'll go from there. But they've got to, excuse me, our doctors and PAs have got to continue to stand up, let their voice be heard, call and talk to me, email me, reach out to your senators. Whatever you do, don't go quiet. If they can bring you to your knees and kill you silently, they will. You have to stay on your feet. You have to stand up. You have to keep shouting, to telling people what's going on and the problems that we're seeing where we are. So just make sure you don't sit down on this one.
Yeah. One of the things that I can tell you is that a group of us parents are getting together. We are keeping our letters, we're keeping our communications, we're keeping copious notes so that our children are not left in the black hole. And I think that's a huge opportunity. If the parents will know that if they keep notes and they make a statement and they call their representatives, because that's where their voice can be heard. The only place our voice can be heard is if we stand behind those we've got elected. And that's one of the things that I've been trying to tell some of the parents. Get with your legislators, such as Senator Bullard has advocated, because that's the important part. And especially if you bring information and you bring notes and you bring documents that explain where you are, then our legislator has something to back them up. They have proof.
Stephanie asks you, do you have a group on Facebook or X or something where people could kind of rally around?
I do not. Actually, I was very concerned about making my voice heard publicly about this issue because I've been private with my issues, but I decided to make it public. I think that what I would like to do is to see if some of the other parents would like to gather with me and also do that. But I can tell you that there are foster and adoption Facebook pages that this is the biggest issue that they have, the biggest issue. And I will discuss with some of them to open it up to the public.
Boy, I would consider doing that, or I would just consider starting a whole separate, page that will keep petition signatures or something, or, maybe Michael and I could help you do something like that on rope or something. I don't know, but people have just got to start. I mean, good night. This is awful. And it's all because Governor Stitt wanted to do something different and not pay attention to what had happened previously. And boy, that's another thing that is so important. I mean, why do the people that we elect not want to govern properly? I mean, why do you just want to do it the way you want to do it? And that's what you want to do. Why do you not want to govern properly? Why do you not want to consult? Why do you not want to research? Why don't you not want to see what's best? Well, because the people come up to you and go, I'm from United Healthcare. Here's, $80,000, and that's what Stephanie said too.
Yeah.
It's just all about the bottom line. It's all about money.
Well, I have to leave. I want to thank all of you and anything that I can do. And I seriously mean this. Everyone knows who I am. I've got a Facebook page and I've got an email and I've got a cell phone and I'm always open. And I want to thank Senator Bullard. You have just absolutely been such a spokesperson for us. And I remember the press conference and there were just not enough people there and there just wasn't enough coverage. And I'd like to see you do it again, sir.
Yes, ma'am. If we can get enough people there, we'll do it again.
Okay.
Well, we'll work on that. Well, thank you so much for being with us, Salome. We really appreciate you, and we just, pray for the best. We'll continue to help as we can. So hang in there.
Thank you, Bob.
All right. Have a great day. All right. So Senator Bullard, what can you give us to send us off?
Well, it's just one of those sad states that the more the government tinkers with something, the worse it usually gets. The private sector does everything so much better anyways. But in this instance, we have to stand up to get a system going that really pays attention to our physicians and what they're saying, what they're doing. And if we don't listen to the professionals in the field and we make this about making hospitals bigger, I've said it before, what good's a hospital without physicians in it? And so we just got to keep going along. I know it's frustrating. It's slow. Most everything we work out in a republic is going to be slow, but we've tinkered with it as a government and we messed it up worse. We just need to go back to what we had.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Bullard, for being with us today. And we don't want to take up any more of your time because we know that you're on the side of the road. But thank you again for being with us. And, please reach out to us, if we can help somehow, and if we can, whatever we can do to help you, move this ball down the line, we're happy to do. So, be sure to reach out and we'll follow up.
Right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. You have a beautiful day.
You too. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. Sarah said, and I wanted to go back to this. It's going to be a bigger problem when OHCA takes the SoonerSelect system and applies the federal incentives to a community health schools program for the state. Ask ODE about the OSDE, about the grant focused on expanding Medicaid in schools. And I completely agree with that. We've talked about community schools, and Julia knows about those. Julia's on this morning. Julia knows we tried to stop community schools. Tammy West ran a bill to try to get community schools, and it's just basically, community health care systems, which would be inside of schools. And it's just another way to get the government in control of children. And I don't know how to
government,
make it clear.
Can I replace the term? It's not the government. Those are slave masters, Jenny. We just need to call them slave masters. It's not the government.
Well, okay, slave masters.
Sorry, slave masters.
You kind of hung me up there. But that's another thing that we just cannot do. We cannot have the government in control of child health care and their education and everything else. It's just like what they did in Germany, where they just took over the schools and then just pumped in, constant Hitler rhetoric. This is where we are today. It's absolutely unthinkable that we would be seeing these things, and yet people are so locked into, well, but we're a red state. Oh, but Governor Stitt is a Republican. Governor Stitt may call himself a Republican, but he is an authoritarian that is a cronyist capitalist who wants to make money.
Well, think about this. So Senator Bullard said there's hundreds of millions of dollars going up, held. Well, let's just do some real simple math. You have $100 million. Let's just take $100 million. You have $100 million in a mutual fund or a time deposit, or, just something that's going to bear interest. Something like that is going to easily, very, very easily earn 5 to 6 to 7% interest. Even if it's just over like a 2-week time period or something like that, you're looking at just 5%, $100 million. That's $5 million right there, just free and clear of our taxpayer dollars that this private insurance company is earning, which I'm sure is going to get paid back out, to legislators in one way or another, through the lobby channels and, whatever it may be. It's so simple to see the money logic in how that works.
Well, and I want to show everybody what I didn't get my workout in this morning because I was doing this, but so I'll be in a icky mood again today. All right. So I wrote this, Kyle Hilbert versus Tom Gann, because just like Senator Bullard was talking about, we already had the Select pro tem that was given to us as pro tem treat left the Senate, Greg McCourtney. Well, lots of people, I wrote several things about the kind of people that were donating to Senator McCourtney, and people understood what was going on in the Senate under Senator Treat, and they wanted something different. And they literally went out and walked and knocked doors for Senator McCourtney's opponent, and he won. And his name is Andrew, and I can't remember his last name for some reason. Somebody will have to chime in and tell me. But he won. And so now we don't have that. Well, I wanted to show, because Kyle Hilbert has been pronounced the Speaker of the House of Oklahoma for next session. But here's the problem. The people that voted on Kyle Hilbert were people who either had, some of them had either termed out, were replaced by somebody else in election, or still have a general election coming up. So people were voting on the person who is going to run essentially the House of Republicans here in Oklahoma before we even had everybody seated who had been elected. And so Tom Gann, and remember, we talked about him, Michael, because we talked about his study on ALPRs.
Yep, on the
right?
cameras.
Right. So if everybody wants to go look at the study on that, it's on our rope2.org website. So if you go so here's the title: Kyle Hilbert or Tom Gann for Oklahoma Speaker of the House hit Hilbert pays camp and is funded mainly by PAC dollars. So I'm just going to scroll through here really quickly. Here are Tom Gann's contributions. You can see them, right? Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. It's a little bit bigger.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
Okay. All right. So those are his contributions, and here are his expenditures. Okay. So if you go down here, now here are Kyle Hilbert's, and this is in the same, this is from January until August. Okay. This is just from January to March. Okay. $43,650 from PACs. $20,657 from people who are individuals who are associated with industry. Okay. So here are his expenses. He spent money on camp, spent money for James Martin Company, which is a political group that also works closely with camp. I've written about them before. All of this information is in this article if you want to go look it up, so you don't feel like I'm just speaking off the cuff here. Here are his contributions from March to June, right here. It was just one $5,000 PAC. And then from June to August, it was $17,500 worth of PAC money. So then if you, and I've got to add this, then he's also a part of this PAC, and I talk about that and where all of that information comes from. So, and I didn't even write down, the names of the PACs, and I'll add those on at the end for that. And, but I want to show something else. So that's that. So if you feel like at any point, and I know I've had people who say, look, my representative gets PAC money, but he doesn't vote like that. Okay. All right. But it's and then I talked with a person this morning, and they said, well, but here's the thing. Nobody's donating to these candidates. Okay. Nobody's donating to the candidates. So they have to have, if they have a Senate PAC or a House PAC, and then they dole out that money to candidates or people who are legislators, then at least they have some way to meet their campaign expenses. Well, but that's really a fallacy, because what we need to do is stop. If we really gave a rat's behind, I'm not being on my best behavior, we really gave a rat's behind about anybody's liberty in Oklahoma, What we would do is we would make the ethics commission say, nope, sorry, you can't accept any money from PACs. You can't accept any money from, you can only accept money from individuals. And those individuals have to be in your district.
Yeah. Well, and
that would solve all the problems, but nobody's willing to do that because look at the amount of money that comes into these campaign accounts.
Yeah. Well, and to rewind on one thing you said there, and this touches back with what Julia said and even what David said. How do you know how these people are going to vote when you say, oh, my guy wouldn't vote like that? If the bills never hit the floor, you don't know how they're going to vote ever. The most conservative bills, the bills that are going to give you the most freedom in one way or another that are killed, you don't know how your people are going to vote because they never make it there in the first place.
Julia, it's true though. You're right. If we gave a rat's behind, we'd have voluntary taxes. You wouldn't be able to put me in jail for not paying my taxes or take my house away from me if I didn't pay my taxes. So who's running the government? Everybody but the people.
Yeah.
Corporations are running it. Lobbyists are running it for the corporations. I mean, it's just absolutely nonsense. We sit here and say, oh, government by the people, for the people. What a pile of crap. That's not happening.
It's just all in namesake. It's just all in and that's the whole problem. We give up all our freedom and our rights for security, convenience, consumption, all these things. You know, that's the whole game plan. We substitute one for the other.
You're not wrong either, Julia. So here's something that I want to show before we get off of here. And we've done a pretty good job. I mean, people are going, oh my gosh, it's only an what happened to the 2 and 3 hours? You flap your gums. But I want to show something before we get off of here, because this, I think, is going to drill down really to the whole bottom line. And that's this. So this morning, for those of you who haven't watched before, you know, thank you for watching today. We really do appreciate it. It's been a great audience today. Thank you so much. Share, 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 share. That's the only way this is going to get better. So one of the things that I wanted to point out is we've talked about wind turbines, right? And about how wind turbines, solar. We're going to have me and Clinton on Friday talking about that giant solar installation. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. We're going to have this huge solar installation that's coming to Enid that they're fighting. They're just trying so hard to fight it. We've got lithium mines. We've got carbon capture. We've got a carbon CO2 pipeline in Oklahoma that even residents don't know about. Yeah. And I'm trying to get that story out as soon as I can. We have all of this Green New Deal crap that Governor Stitt is pushing, because guess what? It's all private corporations. And guess what? They're giving money to the people like Invern Energy, or you guys who are on, who know all of the ones that are pushing this stuff. Does anybody know that the state is taking Biden administration money to pump out Green New Deal crap in red Oklahoma? How many of you people, raise your hand, know that this is going on? You probably don't, because Governor Stitt has kept this way on the QT. Instead of having it out, instead of going to the newspapers and blabbing about this, he's doing stuff like going to the Hill and writing opinion pieces where he says, in Oklahoma, we know that government kills opportunity. So here's what he's going to tell us here. The Biden administration is bad. This is what he's telling us, even though he's taking tons and tons of Biden administration money for the green stuff. It's bad. The Biden administration recently admitted it will fail to meet its own energy development goals with significant congressional farm reform to the permitting process. It's no surprise the federal government has grown so big that it's become its own worst enemy. Well, yeah. And then he goes on to get all of the people who are like, rah, rah, rah. Yes, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. We don't want the government. But he goes all of that. But here's what he basically says. The federal permitting process plainly illustrates this counterproductive cycle, and endless litigious delays and overreaching environmental rules choke business. Okay. Well, guess what? When you relax all of those standards and the rules, like you've done with carbon capture, Governor Stitt and legislature in Oklahoma, now you're putting Oklahomans at risk, not only for losing their property through eminent domain and other ways, but for having problems because of wind turbines and the problems that they cause with livestock and people who live around them. Carbon capture, if you have a CO2 pipeline like the one that runs through Osage County that nobody in Osage County I've talked to knows about, or in northern Washington County, nobody knows about this. That thing ruptures, it will kill anything around it.
Yeah.
But by God, Governor Stitt, no, you're right. We don't want any unnecessary regulations that would impede private developers who are coming in and giving money to candidates to get their stuff put out here. We don't want any unnecessary regulations that might protect the citizens of Oklahoma. People, wake up. This is what's going on. This isn't about providing jobs. This isn't about helping Oklahomans. This is about making rich people rich and screwing you over. Wake up.
100%.
Gosh dang it.
100%. Well, that we need some of those rants and like when you ask David what to do, how to, petition this or that. Yeah, those things work. Maybe going to the Capitol works. I'm telling you, Jenny, we need to take advantage of today's technology. You have some of these doctors in these clinics where this stuff happened. If it's already happened to them, if they literally just make a 20-second, 30-second little video that can go viral that says this is what's happening, it'll just snowball. I mean, we need, like David said, these people aren't standing up. They just need to come forward.
And guess what? I'm getting so mad. Kevin Wallace is gone. He's gone. We got rid of him because these people are horrible. We can do this. It's actually doable if you will just stand up and do it. Diane Anderson, windmills are for money laundering. I can't tell you, if you would actually go out on the web and research, I couldn't read German, but I just found one yesterday where Germans are now saying the windmills that we have, they don't even work. They're not providing the power that we were promised that they were going to provide. Oh my gosh. And now it's killing livestock. Now it's killing mammals in the oceans. RFK isn't wrong, people. He's not wrong. This stuff is bad. How good could it be that the Biden administration is giving out all of these dollars and our governor is taking it, just like Mary Fallon took Common Core money, which came from the Obama administration? You people had better wake up and realize this is all about money. And if we don't get the feds, I don't even care if it's Trump or not, we should be taking no federal money. This is where all this crap comes from. And we shouldn't allow nonprofits to get into our schools or into, because that's the other way they come in. Sandra, preach. I'm losing my voice. She says the kill radius is 3 miles for CO2. True. And it's true. And then she says, thank you, Sandra, for backing me up here. And so is Stephanie. Truth. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and to go back on Sandra's deal real quick, remember that part of that whole deal with Sandra was that kill radius is 3 miles and the easement is literally right outside people's houses. Yeah! They're running it right by people's houses.
Oh my gosh, you're exactly right about that. So when I was looking at this carbon capture place, we have the second largest carbon capture facility in the world. And it's in Osage County. I know tons of people
in Red, Oklahoma, Jenny? In Red, Oklahoma?
In Red, Oklahoma. And we have a CO2 pipeline that runs down to it. And when I'm calling people in Osage County who are my friends, I'm like, did you know about this? They're like, no, I had no clue. These aren't people who sit on their butts all day. These are people who are out knocking doors. These are people who are out in their communities, and they don't know about it. So when I called the county commissioners in Osage County, I talked to 2 of them. Well, I didn't know anything about that. Well, how can the county commissioners not know of something that can kill their residents? Guess why? Because they're not allowed to permit it. And then people will actually say, well, I don't want any regulations. I don't want any zoning regulations. People, I get it. But here's the thing. Without any zoning regulations, without anything in place, here's what happens. These private companies come in and they go, oh, well, here's some money if you'll just let us do this on your property. And then people go, oh, gosh, money, this is great. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And then they do it. And then the rest of us are all the ones that end up including them, but then we all end up being the worst for it. So nobody's protecting us but us. And I swear to God, Governor Stitt is selling us out down the river to the green agenda. And that's where we are in this state right now.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry.
Well, I'll go back always to the same thing that I tell my kids.
We have so many comments.
I know, you better start putting those up. If the government really cared, Jenny, they would fix the food supply. They would teach these kids. We'd have proper education from kindergarten on about how food works, how energy works, how all this stuff works. And 100%, I mean, if you're feeding your kids McDonald's and Doritos, you're a major part of the problem, 100%. I mean,
yes.
if they actually cared, they could fix healthcare just by having the proper education with these kids for 12 years of their life. They would understand how the human body works and how the entire how your immune system works and all. I mean, it's all a racket to extract money from us through healthcare. It's not even healthcare. It's just an extraction process.
Yeah, we need to get on some of these people, Sandra. Just start giving me info and we'll get them on. We will, right, Michael?
That's right.
That's what we're all about. We're all about telling you what's going on that nobody else is telling you.
Yeah.
Nobody's telling you this stuff. Who's telling you this stuff? I mean, Michael and I, we're not scared. I mean, we're just not scared. You can't scare us. So, I mean, well, you can't scare me. My kids are all gone. And if I end up sitting in a prison cell because you put me there, I guess I'll, just hope I can needlepoint because I don't really care. I'm down to the point where I am not going to shut up and I am not going to be quiet because what's going on here is wrong. What's going on is wrong.
Yeah, there you go, Jenny.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of like what what Bullard says. It's like they're gonna get me. I mean, because this is it. We don't have the money. All we have is each other, and if we don't band together, that's what's going to end up happening. We're just going to get nowhere because we can't band together because we don't have the kind of money that we need to out money these people. When you realize why this information isn't being shared on MSM, you will see the great work being done. Educate yourself, people. That's exactly right. I mean, Dana, 100%. We have some good people. Oh my gosh, you did such a great job last year with the election, this year with the elections. Keep going. We cannot tire, but we have to band together and we have to get people to understand that what's happening isn't right. And you can't just keep telling me my kid needs a job. And because who said the state's open for business? That's Sandra did because the state's open for business. That's what Stitt says all the time. We're not open for business. That's not what you're trying to do. You, Governor Stitt, are there to make sure that our liberties are protected and that this state is protected, that we have the ability to protect the liberties of everybody who's here. It's not about what we can build. It's not about bringing business in. But see, when you look at the state as a business, that's what you come up with. That's your stupid model is, well, it's all about money. It isn't about money. And does anybody realize that last year we passed the biggest budget we've ever passed in Oklahoma ever? Does anybody ever realize that we keep giving public education money after money after money every single year? And just like you said, Michael, to your point, how are we educating these kids? Kids should know that you breathe out carbon dioxide, trees take them up and pump you back out oxygen. That should be the first thing you know. And if you knew that, you would go, oh my gosh, all of that carbon stuff then must be just genius messaging, which it is.
It is. It really is. It is.
Oh my gosh, I've made myself cry. I'm like sweating.
Well, I said several episodes ago, I said, I think the time, things are changing, maybe not at the speed we would like, but people are waking up. People are seeing things, we did this podcast because it was another avenue to educate, and that's just a way, you've got clips now that are going viral, and that's how these things are going to steamroll. And that's how we're going to wind up beating them. That's how we're going to band together, is because it's so easy to take one of your clips and just send it out to 20 people. And you just never know who or how that's going to get picked up. And that, to me, that is the most important way to beat these people, is to use their own technology against them. Because we can knock 1 million doors, we can, send out envelopes, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you have to get people where their attention is, and it's on these platforms.
Oh my God. I just keep reading these clips and I'm like, please clip the part about the power of the grassroots.
Yeah.
Okay, Rachel, I will.
100%.
Well, because it's true. I mean, you're absolutely right. And it's so easy. I got so mad. I've been
Well, that's
so
the best
mad.
part. I mean, people want to see you mad. They want to see some emotion. That we need that little pulse meter over here on the side.
No, you need my blood pressure meter is what you need. Yeah, but I mean, honestly, oh yeah, and thank you, because what and what Diane said about the Lorax, and here's what I was thinking about the other day, Michael. Tell me what you think about this. So I was sitting here thinking, I remember when I read the Lorax, and I was like, oh, that sounds so, like greeny, ooh, yeah. And I thought, well, where did that come from? Because I have a farm. I mean, if I don't protect my soil, it doesn't grow me anything. If I don't make sure that my animals have food, they don't provide me any food. I mean, you can't go out and, ruin your farm and then expect it to produce anything. We have to be good stewards of the earth. And I honestly think that I've fallen for propaganda, that this propaganda of, green this and green that. And you're like, oh, that's terrible. Well, the problem is so much of it is terrible because they're actually making money off of it and then lying about what it's actually like.
Yeah.
And then the big lie is that all the stuff that's supposed to be green that we're supposed to say is helping us is not helping us at all. It's usurping our land. It's ruining our water. It's taking our supplies of everything. My gosh. Oh, I get to the point where I get so frustrated. I can't even communicate properly because the whole thing is such an absolute scam, and yet so many people don't see it.
Well, because it's so well branded. I mean, no one wants to pollute anything that I know. I don't know a single person that wants to pollute the air, pollute the water, pollute the ground, but that's what big industry does. I mean, literally for $1. That's what they do. It's a bottom line deal. And we've already talked about it multiple times with Julianne. The whole green deal comes down to being able to track you as a carbon being. Now you have a complete carbon footprint. If you're working from home doing laundry, your company's going to know that your carbon footprint affects their business. And that's just where it's going. It's 100% control for the sake for the sake of the earth, for the sake of, it's the most perfect marketing. It's no different than the marketing that they used in COVID to completely lock us down, shut the schools down, do all the crazy things they did, shut the churches down, to save your neighbor, 2 weeks to stop the spread, whatever, to, change the curve. All that was just total mind control BS, total BS. It was just a test run. The whole green initiative is the exact same thing. It's 100% control because it takes things from us and now it gives it to a singular organization, whether it's a federal organization or state or whatever, or private. They're the ones that's going to make the decisions about how your land is. They're the ones.
And how can you affect a private company?
Yeah. It's the extraction of our rights, our wealth from us. It's just a slow process. It's slow kill. It goes, because look how long the Green Deal's been around. Remember Al Gore when he made the big movie back in 2012? We were already going to be underwater and all the ice caps were going to be melted. Remember that? I mean, this thing has been around for a long time.
Well, but here's the other thing that just kills me. And this is, does nobody remember the hockey stick?
Yeah.
Do you remember the hockey stick? Does anybody else remember the hockey stick? It was the whole global warming is assured because we have this graph and it shows that it just went crazy. Do you know that that's not true? He was actually the guy who wrote that and did that study. And I can't remember what his name is. And usually I remember it. But he was found to have been making up that data.
Yeah. Well, look at
made the data up.
I followed a guy, Jenny, for quite a while. He was one of these. He was a total green guy, and then he turned into like a green buster, like he was busting all these scientists. And what he did is he literally mapped out all of the temperature gauges where they moved them. So they have all these temperature gauges that they use for NOAA and all these deals. Well, they moved them like from out in a field over to like right onto the tarmac of an airport or on top of a building or, where they would know it's purposefully going to be, 5 or 10 degrees hotter consistently in an area to usurp the actual data that's coming out.
Look at what Amber says. In Oregon, there was Bob Packwood yelling timber industry, killing the spotted owl. It was all a lie. The timber industry was decimated because of it. I remember that. Amber, you're going to die when I tell you this story. I was actually doing my, the end of my bachelor's or something when they first started doing that. And when I was in college, I was a greenie. I was like Spike the trees. How did I become that? How was I that? In college, I voted for Reagan when I was 18.
Hey, well, I'll tell you something, Jenny. You still look like that just in person. And I've had people tell me that, like I'll send them a clip from the podcast. They're like, man, that lady you're with, she's saying things that doesn't really go with the way she looks. She looks like she's like major liberal. I'm like, Jenny, she's pretty hardcore.
I don't know what Amber is wowing. The fact that I look liberal or whatever. Now I'm just dying laughing. Climate Gate by Brian Sussman. I met him when I lived in California. He's awesome. There's another one called Chasing the Green Dragon. And I know I saw that one time and heard the guy who wrote that book speak and he was it was the same way. But the problem is, Oh, and I forgot about this. Amber. Yep, Jenny looks like a Eugenite. Oh gosh, now I really am gonna have to color my hair, or cut it, or do something.
You need some little trendy liberal glasses on. Also, that's what you need to wear.
I'll pass. When I was Rachel says this, when I was growing up in the 90s, we were taught endless propaganda about acid rain in school. And oh my gosh, I totally remember that.
Yeah. Well, I told you that. One of my biggest fears as a kid was acid rain, literally acid rain. I would be scared as a kid when it would rain in the Panhandle.
And you tell your mom to come in because you were scared.
Yeah, literally.
I remember that. I don't know why I'm laughing. It's not funny. Okay, so I think we're going to have to get off of here because I fear we could just go on and on and on. But you know what, guys? Thank you so much for being on today. Argy says she has on cowboy boots. Definitely not a liberal.
Well, ultimately, Jenny, the government is not our friend.
No.
Industry, these big corporations, their bottom line is all that matters to them. They don't care if they kill people. They don't care if their drugs kill people. They don't care if their cars kill people. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is their bottom line. They're in bed with the government, period. The government and these crony capitalist people are one and the same, and they're there to extract money from us and control us in any way they can.
Well, and who said, I think it was Amber pointed out about, although anybody who's on here right now this morning could have done that. And I still want to go back to this. They put us in boxes so we wouldn't stand up against this because conservative Christians don't care about the environment. See, I think that's such a perfect thing. That's why they have to put us in these little boxes. That's why propaganda is so important. That's why it works, because we believe this crap and then we end up either fighting each other over stuff that isn't even real, which lets the big people win, the corporations win, or we go, well, I don't know. Well, I'm for, capitalism. So shouldn't we be okay with these companies coming in and doing all of this stuff? And then you realize that they're actually raping the state of whatever it is, water or, electricity. Really, honestly, are you, Michael, or anybody else watching going to want to live under an 18-mile wide electrical corridor, which we're going to have because according to Stitt, we have to have these big buildings that are going to house all of this Bitcoin stuff and all of these data mining things and they're going to take all of this energy. And how else are we going to provide all that energy if we don't have solar, if we don't have wind, if we don't have hydrogen or wind, carbon, whatever,
Well, let me give an example of.
I'm going to have a heart attack. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Let me give an example of how two-faced this green initiative is. This is a personal example. So I had a guy that this guy was a big yard sprayer, chemical guy. And literally, I would watch this guy, and this is in Edmond, this is in my neighborhood. This guy would come home and dump his entire chemical trailer just right into the little drainage ditch.
What?
Okay, yeah, right into the drainage ditch at his house. So I called the city, and I was like, hey, something that you can't be able to do this. This is like running off. This just runs right off into a stream that's down the street from me. I said, this is Edmond. We have to be able to take care of our environment a little better than this. The lady literally came up to me and said, hey, he's dumping on his own property. There's nothing we can do about it. That's it. Think about that. In Edmond, Mr. Green Edmond, Mr. Green Clean Edmond. And I'm like, well, I said, to me, this is just putting toxins straight into our water supply that are not filtered out. You guys may sanitize our water. You don't filter it. And I said, this is total BS. But they said, there's nothing we can do about it. We're not going to do anything about it. They came out to his house. They looked at it. They said, yeah, we're not going to do anything about it. Literally said that.
Well, and Sandra, I hope, the drainage ditch is part of the easement. That's right. So it would be city property. So the city could do something.
Yeah, they don't want to.
But here's the thing. Sandra's on here and she knows, where does that water go? It goes back to the water treatment plant.
Yeah.
Where does human manure come from? The water treatment plant, after you separate the sewage out, right? And so this is the same stuff that's being dumped on farmland. So you're not just getting it where you in your neighborhood, you're getting it in your food because they're dumping that crap on farmland because there are farmers. And see, that's the thing. There are no boxes for anybody anymore because farmers, some of them are great. Some of them are like, Rachel said earlier, where, they're the ones that know what's best for their property. But then you have some of them that take federal subsidies. We found that out with Kevin Wallace. He takes federal subsidies. He dumps human manure on his ground while he's saying, well, it's my place. I can do what I want. Like the water under his property isn't going to be affected by the crap that he puts onto the top of it. And like Eliza says, it goes into rivers and creeks because it goes right through there. They can't start regulating or they set a precedence. And that's the other thing Sandra's found out. You try to go talk to these county commissioners and they're like, well, we can't really regulate any of it because then we'll have to start regulating. And you're like, but you just can't even, And so back to the farmers, some of them take subsidies, some of them, so what you have to do is you have to judge, just like the founders said. The founders were all about individuals and individual freedoms and individuals completely. What propaganda has done has gotten us to lump people in these groups, like Sandra said earlier. And then that's the way that we fight each other and we get broken up, because any farmer should at least have, it's your property. You could do what you want, but not if it affects somebody else. And if you're going to have people who are farming and their whole thing is just their bottom line and not what happens to their neighbors and not what's going to be best for their farm, for their kids or whoever buys it afterwards, then we have a huge problem here. And I guess it all boils down to be the individual and what the individual doesn't. I mean, we got to quit worrying about just ourselves.
Well, and look how important. Let's drill down all the way to the lowest level. That farmer, he's associated, probably whether he wants to or not, you're associated with the largest chemical ag companies in the world, like Monsanto, like Cargill, in one way or another. There's a reason why those companies are in the farming business. There's a reason why they control all the seeds. They control all the crops. They control all the chemicals.
That's another one, behind the green mask. I forgot about that. Thank you, Diane. You're right about that one. That's another good one. So if you want to go get behind the green mask, and was it actually a book, or was it just, Diane, is it a book, or is it just the documentary?
I don't know.
I don't know either. They should be able to regulate anything that poisons their constituents. It's a book. Okay. Yeah. Good job, ladies. Thank you so much. Well, okay. Get that in.
Those companies are the ones pumping out all the money to put the people in our legislature that's writing these laws that are against us.
Big pharma companies are also big ag companies. Oh my gosh, I totally forgot about that.
They're all one and the same.
Yeah, I totally forgot about that. You can get the gist of it through YouTube. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you know what's sad, Jenny? We live in the most technologically advanced time ever. We have the most technology, yet we're the sickest. We're the most toxic. We're the most messed up. Our kids are messed up. They're chemically messed up. You've never seen so many neurological issues with all the ADHD, all this stuff. That's all chemical imbalance. That's all chemical related, which goes right back to our food supply, which goes right back to our farmers and right back to all these businesses, which is supposed to be, our legislators are supposed to be protecting us from all this stuff. But are they? No, because they're too busy getting paid off to protect these large interests in these companies.
But Sandra, who is tell me who the wind companies are that are coming in again, because I've gotten my blood pressures shut off my ability to think.
Well, and I still want to play that little 2-minute video from Dr. Martin.
Okay, please.
Over at when he testified, this was just his little closing statement here. This is fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, on April 27th,
can you hear that?
I stood in front of a camera.
Up.
And I actually tried to blow a whistle before all of this death happened. It's still on YouTube. You can still watch it. April 27th, 2020. It's called Butterfly of the Week. It says you are under house arrest. You can go look at that video. It's still up on YouTube. How it's still up on YouTube, I don't know, but it is. But you can have a look at it. It's 59 minutes of your life you'll never get back. But it's 59 minutes that actually proves a very important point. Every death we talked about today was avoidable. On April the 27th, 2020, had we taken this meeting and taken this action, every death we're talking about today was avoidable, and we didn't do it. And it sucks to be sitting here as me. I had a different bow tie on that day. But everything that we were told in fear, remember, face masks, C.R. McIntosh published the study that said cloth face masks increase your risk of influenza-like illness. And that was a published study before any of this happened. Remdesivir was known to be 53% deadly in 2018, published. Lipid nanoparticles were known to be lethal in 2014 and 2016, published. We actually knew that the intent of the conspirators of this particular medical racketeering mafia exercise actually already had planned to kill people on September 18th, 2019. We had all of this before patient one had to die. If we are serious, we will realize that under Section 802 of the Patriot Act, this was an act of domestic terrorism, and I should be sitting in Oklahoma City to say this. This is a city that understood the scourge of domestic terrorism, and this is a city that should reclaim its brand as a place to say never again. Because if we're serious about preventing these and other crimes, then let's brand Oklahoma City as the place where we do not tolerate domestic terrorism, whether that's done at the hand of a bomber or at the hand of a lab coat. Because instilling fear is the fundamental and root cause of the cancer that destroys everything that we stand for about liberty, everything that we stand for about being citizens of this great country. And I would expect that I should be no other place than Oklahoma City to say, let's stand again against terrorism. Thank you very much.
So Diane wants you to post the link. Can you post the link for that?
Yep.
All right.
And there, you know what? Here's the sad part, Jenny. There were thousands of people just like Dr. Martin there.
I'm gonna play next.
That were
It's probably the most.
I gotta mute that. That were out saying that we're completely on the other side of all the COVID stuff. Yet our people, our government, our media, they all chose to go with the exact same lie of all that. But I'm proud of guys like that. And he called it out from the very beginning. I watched all of his stuff from the very beginning when it first happened. I just happened to come across a clip, and it was unbelievable what he was saying. I mean, he made ties back to Ralph Barrick in North Carolina and all the COVID stuff with the origin. I mean, it's insane.
Well, this is making me sad. Amber said, I cried watching this. It's especially at the beginning when I felt so validated about anthrax shots being perpetuated on the military. Our two daughters have serious medical issues, and we're certain it's due to my husband having about a dozen anthrax shots. That's just heartbreaking.
Yeah. Well, I literally know someone, Jenny, that had COVID. They went and they were kind of making a comeback, pretty decent, young person, not real old, young person, probably in their 40s, went on remdesivir and literally died like 2 weeks later.
Well, and look, I mean, school lunches are provided by KFC, Taco Bell. And you know what's interesting is this is how bad we are. We're like, oh, yeah, that's awesome. They're getting, Taco Bell at school. Isn't that cool? I don't have to make them a lunch. And I won't go there. Next Wednesday is another study, this one on solar in Oklahoma and then on the Kiamichi River Dam. Yes, we need to get them on the show too. McVeigh was working with Hussein, just like today's lab coat terrorists are working with global terrorists. And that's true about that. People have no idea that shedding is real. And that's another problem with that. And oh God, that's so sad.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, Jim.
I don't see any comments by Amber. I find that odd. Maybe because Amber, on what are you watching? I'm not sure. Amber, my friend, the same 2 daughter, both husband and wife were in the Navy. No one believed us, but during the ice bucket challenge, my husband was diagnosed with progressive bulbar palsy. The VA said it was most likely due to the shots. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
I believe it 100%. 100%.
Dr. Martin is an amazing truth teller. He knows the details and articulates them with profound insight. He should be the head of HHS.
Yeah.
Yes, my husband had a coworker that died from the protocol of remdesivir and a ventilator. Amber, you're on Facebook. I wonder why Eliza's not seeing your comments. That's very interesting. I don't know, unless you guys are on 2 different Facebook pages. Okay, well, we're up at 150 now, and I do want to be careful about people's time because I know, and this is probably the good way to stop is Jules' comment. Moral of the story, government has declared war on us. How do you convince tyrants to stop stealing, killing, and destroying? I can tell you how. You water the tree of liberty with the blood of tyrants. I didn't say that. I'm just repeating a quote from Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah.
We don't have to actually do any bloodletting. What we have to do is what we did this last election. Get the hell out of our chairs, quit quarterbacking, quit being scared that something's going to happen to you if you cough up. Okay, I got unelected from my position in Luther, most probably because I went on January 6th and we have a couple of activists in town. Okay, so what happened? I didn't crawl it. Well, I crawled under my bed for a couple of days, but then I got back out and then we started this podcast. So anything that's going to happen to you, man, God has your back. We're told about that anyway. And even if you don't like the way it ends up, my gosh, Paul was in prison. Paul was martyred. I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but God, I don't know what to tell you, but we can do this. We just have to stick together to do it. Okay. All right. Love it, Jenny. Wake up. We are fighting war. Just because it's not physical, in a sense, it is a war. Amen. All right. So I can get my blood pressure to go back down. I'm going to get off. But guess who we're having on for Friday? We're having another Patreon on. She's Nean Clinton. She's taking on the solar installation in Garfield County. She and another group of people. And now they filed a lawsuit. And I hate that we have to file lawsuits for these things. But you know what? The left has been doing this for years. We just do what we have to do to make things work out. So please be with us. Please. At 9:00 in the morning on Friday morning, Neanne can give you some great pointers. They're having she'll tell you a little bit about the fundraiser that they're having in Enid on Saturday night. I'm going to go. I know Sandra's going to go. A bunch of us are going to be there to support them. We need to do that. So please be with us on Friday. Let's hear what Neanne has to say. Let's get behind Neanne and let's do what we need to do. And we've got some great shows coming up for next week, but I'll let you know what those are another time. Just be sure to be here on, and I'm going to stop with this one. You're right. We need to get out of being comfortable. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being with us. You guys are great. We only exist because of you. And we can only get out this information when you share it with your friends and family, just like Margie told me on text the other day. So thank you for that, Margie. All right. Anything else before we hop off of here?
That's it.
All right. Thank you again for being with us. We really do appreciate you. Thank you so much. And write letters to Senator Bullard. And we'll see you again on Friday morning. Bye.